Hello guys, welcome to another episode. In this demonstration, we're going to build a simple app from an API endpoint, and that is the world API. We got this API from this free API website, restcountries.com, and the endpoint we're going to be making use of in this demonstration is the all endpoint, which has the full name of the country, the code, the list of codes, currency, language, capital, region, sub-region, and so much more. So we're going to be querying this API in this demonstration to produce the app that is going to look exactly like this. So as you can see, this is the list of the world countries. So as you can see, this is the list of the world countries, every country in the world from every continent. So you can search any country you want. Let's say we're looking for India, for instance. So you see, it gives us a filter of India and some other country that starts with that in initial characters. So here we have the country name, the official name of the country, and the capital, the sub-region, which part of the continent is this country from in. So, and the continent, then the area, that's the landmass, and the language they speak, and also the population, just basic information about the selected countries. So here is just a simple demonstration of how you can query an API endpoint using Retrofit and also caching the data in our local database. If we inspect our database, you find out that this data is cached so that we don't, for data persistence, so that we don't keep querying this API all the time. So for this app, let me see if I can show you the database from here. Yeah, so as you can see from here, we have the database, and we can actually inspect our database to see if the data is cached or not. So we'll select all from countries, and if we run that, let me take this up a little bit. This is where all the country data are cached down here. So that is what we're going to be demonstrating in this app, how you can query this endpoint from this API and also catch it in your local database for persistency, and also this search request where you can search for any country that you wish to search for, instead of going through this whole list, which is endless. So that's what we're going to do, and I hope you follow along. I will share the link in the description for the starter code for this demonstration in case you want to code along, so you can find out below. Then I've already created, let's close this down. So I've already created a fresh empty Jetpack Compose app project here, and we don't have anything right now in our project. So first of all, we'll start by including all our dependencies for this project. So if you go here, you see that it's just the basic dependencies that it came with. So we can also increase this, I think. So we can just leave this target as a case, giving us some warning, but that's not important right now. So from the old project, let me copy this instead of boring you with typing out each and every one of these, so that I don't bore you with that. So I'll copy all this and I'll paste it here. So let's copy the other dependencies. So if you come down here, here are the list of dependencies for room, for Hilt and Dagger, and from that for Dagger Hilt as well. Then coroutines for our threads, for thread safety, and also some extended icons which we might have need of as we design this project. Okay, so then JSON converter, which is we're going to use to convert the JSON bit, and also coil for the image and flag. Also, these are the dependencies that we need, so I'll just copy that now. Once you download the starter code, you're going to have all these dependencies already there for you, so you don't need to trouble yourself with typing it out. So that's here. Then this there's another one, this room schema directory. We'll need that as well, so I'll copy that, then I'll put that back here. Okay, so I guess that's all we need for now. Let's sync our project and see. Unresolved reference. So there's, oh, okay, I've not included the plugins here. That's my bad. All right, so let's include all the plugins as well. So we include all the plugins here, and let's try it again and see if we're in the clear. Could not create task. KSP debug Kotlin. Okay, let's update our Kotlin as well and see if that will. Okay, let's try again. If there is mismatch of the version for any of them, you keep running into this issue. Let's just hope we've taken care of that. Okay, it seems we are in the clear. Let's see. Seems like we've. Okay, so as you can see now, our build was successful. So that means we have all the dependencies that will be requiring. So when you launch your own program or you download this, everything will be set up for you. So I hope you don't go through this, but if you go through this, just check the dependencies and see that the version are the same across the dependencies you're trying to download, so that you don't have too much issues starting up. So firstly, we're going to be needing the internet for this project, so let's start with adding that uses permission for the internet. Okay, so now that we've added the uses permission for the internet, the next thing we'll want to do is I just designed the logo for our app. It's not so important, but it's just for aesthetic purposes, because this is not a production app. It's just to make our app look unique and fancy. So when you, for instance, install this app in your phone, it looks like something serious you can showcase to your friends, and that's just what it is. It's not important. You can skip this period and move to the more important thing. So I think I have this. Yeah, I have the logo here, so I'll just copy it and add it to my MIP map here. Oh, sorry, my bad. It's already here. So I have to rename this because this naming convention is not allowed here. So let's refactor that. So we need to name your naming. If you're adding any image, it should be in lowercase letter. So I'm using underscore to separate them like this, just like this one's here. So you see now it's not complaining anymore. So we'll refactor that here. So right now we have our Country Explorer logo. So all we need to do is to replace here with it, and that is Country Explorer. Yeah, and you can also do that for the launch, for the icon as well, so everything looks uniform. Yeah, so right now once you run your app, you will see that in your menu, you see that you have that logo here. So let me show you what the logo looks like. So it's just a simple logo like this, Country Explorer. Okay, so yeah, no, so now that we've done that, let's just move on to the important aspect of our project. I'm going to need this, so I'm not closing it. So let's go to our main activities. We need to clean up our main activities a little bit. But before we do that, we'll need to create the country application, because we're going to use Hilt Dagger for this application for our navigation and dependency injection as well. So we're going to create a class. Let me close all this down. Okay, no, close all this down. Okay, here let us, in this our root package here, let's create a class which is going to be, we'll call it our Explorer application. That sounds like a good name. So as usual, Explorer is going to inherit from application class, Android application class here, right? So then we'll have to annotate that with @Hilt Android application. So this is it. So now this is our application class done. We don't need it anymore. So now when we go to our main activity, now we have to annotate this as the Android, the entry point for our application, so that once our app is launched, we annotate this to as, sorry, I've done that before, Android entry point here, this one. So once that is done, that means once our app is launched for the first time, it looks for the main activity, which is the entry point. Then in this main activity, we're going to nest our navigation class, or we can also put our navigation the navigation code in the main activity, whichever way you want to do that. But first of all, I need to cut out all these greetings from our main activity, because we don't need that anymore. Then here we have this greeting, this is going as well. Then here let us use a column, because we're using scaffold, in case you want to add your top app bar, but we're not going into that. If you check the other video we did on Room, you learn how to do that from that demonstration. So that I don't want this demonstration to be too long, so we'll pass inner padding here. So with that, now our main activity is set as it should. So what we need to do now is, once we create our navigation class or file, we can call it from here, so that with that, from the main activity, it takes us to our navigation component, which will now track the first screen we want to show our users, which is our list screen. So I hope you're following up with that. So now that we've created our Android application, the entry point and all that, it's time to flesh out our application. As you already know, on this channel we want to focus on clean architecture so that you can start practicing a standard way of developing your app from the onset, so that it becomes a culture, it becomes part of you, that moving forward you can make sure that your apps are structured properly. If you're working in the industry or you're working for a client, you'll be able to structure the app in a very professional and smart way so that your app can be easily scalable and all, for security reasons, and also to segment each section of your app. So with that said, we can now close this down temporarily. Then we are missing out something here. In our Android manifest, we need to add the name of our Android application, which we just created moments ago. So just type name here, then we just call our Explorer application, and that's it. So our app is well organized so that Hilt, once Hilt comes into action, you will be able to track our app and also display our screens accordingly. So now we're done with this. So in the next section, we're going to create our project structure the way we want to structure our projects, which is the data layer, the domain layer, then the UI layer. So that is what we're going to do in the next section. I'll see you on the next page. Let's go. So in this section, we're going to flesh out our main layers, which is going to be our packages. So first of all, we're going to create a package here, and we'll call that package the data package, which is going to be our data layer. Then as well, we'll create another one which we'll call our domain package, and that is our domain layer, and as well the presentation layer, which is our UI layer. Then finally, I like to add the DI in a different package, which I'll call DI. So that's it. So this is our 4 main major packages that we're going to be needing for this app. Then after that, we need to start creating. First of all, we're going to get this feed our data, our app. The data is coming from an API endpoint, which I've shared the link with you before, and it's going to be on the description section below. So next off, we're going to, first of all, before we cache the data for persistence and offline capabilities, we need to feed our data, get our data from the API, isn't it? So because we can't cache data that is not fetched. So right now, we'll first of all start with creating our remote our API service, which is I will call the remote package. So that remote package is part of this data layer, so which is going to be called remote. And in this, I've made this mistake. All right, I'll refactor this, rename this. It's not going to let me do that, so I don't like doing this. So what I will do, I will delete this and redo. Yes, I will delete this. So right now I'm going to recreate the data layer. So to avoid that error you just saw now, what we're going to do is I will start with creating our classes, then now create a package and move them in there later. Okay, so first of all, we're going to create our retrofit client, which is going to query the database. So down here, we're going to create an object. So we'll create an object which we'll call our retrofit client. So now this retrofit client is going to have a body. Here, and in this body we're going to create a constant, which is our private constant val, and we'll call it our base URL. That's the base URL for our API endpoint. That's the website we're going to get this this data from, which is HTTPS. You can find the link on the description section below. Countries, no, rest countries, yeah, .com /. So this is going to be our base URL. Then now we have to create a function to create the create function that is going to create this link between our app and this API endpoint, and that is fun create, and it will inherit from the country API services, which we have not created, but we're going to create that in a moment. We'll create that class. So we're going to create that class in a separate file, which is in the data. So that's the API country services. So we'll continue with this. The error is gone. So now we're going to return the retrofit retrofit2.builder. So, and that's .base URL, which we just created above, add convert factory, yeah, which is our JSON converter factory, yeah, .create. So with this, we're creating the connection between our API endpoint to fetch our data. So .build and .create, and we will still call our country API services or class.java. So with that, now we have created that connection. Then we also need to, now in this is where we now decide which part of the API endpoint are we querying. So if you go back to our API endpoints, you see you can check for latest added endpoint, like independent countries, something like that, or you can check the all. So in this API country API services, that is where we're going to determine which part of the API endpoint we are interested in. So, but this is going to be an interface though. So it's going to be an interface so that we don't have any interference. Then down here, we're going to use the get annotation from retrofit, and we're going to pass the other part of our API endpoint. Like let me show you quickly. So like now, if I click on the all, this is the whole link. So this is the one we added in our retrofit client ending here. So now we'll add this second part to tell the API that this is the endpoint we're interested in. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Yeah, so now we are going to say then this is going to be a string v3/all, which is the one we're interested in. Then after that, we're going to create a function to get all the countries, which is going to be a suspend function so that it doesn't interfere with our main thread, right? So with that, it's going to pass the list of the country DTO, which is the data transfer object that we have not created yet. So we're going to pass that list here, because since we're going to cache this data in our local database, it's important that we create this data transfer object in case the way we're representing it in our room there is a difference with the way the API is serving us the list, so that we won't have any conflict when our data arrive. Okay, so this is country DTO we have not created yet, so let's create that in a separate file. The country DTO is still part of the data layer, but it's going to be in the model layer. You'll see that in a minute. Okay, so now that we've created this, now our API is set up properly. Now, to avoid that initial error that we encountered before, if we start creating our packages now, it's not going to add up the way it did in the last time. So now let's create remote and see what happens. You see, so it's not adding up, it's not .data anymore. So now we can just create the other ones, which is we're going to create another package called local, where our local database implementation is going to be housed. Then another one we need here is our mapper to map the data from our API to our local database model. So that's going to be package and mapper. Okay, so that's done. Then the next one, we need a model package as well. This goes into the remote package, and also the the retrofit client also goes into the remote package. So the country DTO goes into the mapper. Okay, so sorry, the country DTO goes into the model package as well, because that's where we're going to create our DTO, which we're coming to in a minute. All right, so we can close all these other ones down. Now let's create our model. So we're going to create our country entity, which is our model class. Which is going to be the data class that we're going to use to create our entity tables. So now it's going to be part of the model, and I'm going to call that our country entity, which is what it's going to be like, and that's going to be a data class. So call this country entity. Right, so in this country entity, we're going to have series of parameters depending on the data we are interested in displaying in our app. So let's see. Okay, this is our app. Okay, this is our app. So as you can see from our app, in our app here, we have these countries, and these are the data that we need to showcase, that we're interested in showcasing to our users. So that's what's going to make up the entity class, which is just like the columns that are going to be in the room database. So by the time we set up our DTO, we're able to match it with whatever is coming from our API server. Okay, so first of all, each country has a name, and no two countries has the same name. So because of that, we're going to make the name the primary key, so that we can use it to identify our countries. So now, first of all, we need to annotate this class as the entity class using the @entity annotation. From room. And now the name, we're going to name our table, and the table name is just countries should be okay. So countries, yeah, is the name of our table. Then in this table, we're going to use the country code as the primary key for in this demonstration. So we're going to create val country code, and is going to be a string, right? So now this country code, we'll need to annotate it as the primary key from room, and also add column info as well to tell room that this is a column. So that is the annotation we need for this parameter. So let me just copy this and just duplicate this so that I don't bore you with typing all this. Let me just put all the parameters that we need, then I will come back to you. Okay, so right now we've created all the parameters that we'll need, which is the name, the country code, the official name, continent, subregion, flag, PNG, flag, SVG, so capital, population, area, and languages. So that's our entities. So now in the country DTO, we're going to serialize all the names so that we can now match it to the way it's coming from our API endpoint. And here, this is also a data class, right? So here, the country DTO, we're going to have some parameters, not a body. Oh damn, what am I doing? Okay, so here we're going to use a serialized name. And first of all, we have the name, which is val name DTO. We're going to create another data class for this because we'll have two names. We'll have the common name and we'll have the official names. So we're going to separate that like that. So DTO class. So let's quickly create that below and fill it up later. Create it in the, yeah. So you create it as an external. So this is, let's cut this. This is supposed to be down here, but it doesn't matter actually. But if we put it here, and it's going to be a data class, right? So here it's going to have its own parameters, which is, so here we're going to have a serialized name again, and this is going to be our common name for the particular country, and it's going to be val common, and it's going to be a string. And that's the second one is going to be the official name. Oh, supposed to enclose this in a bracket. Yeah. So, and this is going to be val official name, and it's also a string. Yeah. So now this is our DTO, and the rest is our country code. So at serialized name, so from our API endpoint, this is the way the country code is. Okay, let me see if I can show you that from the API endpoint. So I don't have a JSON formatter in this system, but this is our JSON, the way it is supplied. Let me see. Like you can see, CAA2 is the country code, as you can see from here. This is Georgia and the country code is GS. So that is how it's represented in our API endpoint. So but that is why we need the data transfer object to convert all that in a way that Kotlin will understand that. So I hope that makes it clearer for you. So country code is also a string. So the next one is our region, our flags. Our flag is also have to. Our flag came into there is a link for the SVG format, so that you don't have issue of resizing it when, in case you're interested in using that format. So this is flags. Then we'll call our flags DTO. I'm missing val here. So that's it. So this, our data classes should be part of our country DTO here. So that's our country DTO done. So now our model is ready. Then our remote is ready. Then in the next chapter, we are going to deal with our local database. Okay, so go grab a cup of coffee or tea, whatever you drink, or water. Then let's continue in the next chapter. Hello, welcome back. So in this section, we're going to now create our local database implementation so that it will listen for data that comes in from the API service. Okay, so to start with, we're going to create our database, which we'll call the country database. Okay, so the country database. So now the country database is going to be an abstract class. We don't have abstract class option here, and we're going to call that an abstract class for separation of concern, to hide our database implementation from every other part of the app. So it's going to inherit from the room database. Yeah, so we're going to inherit from the room database, and also we're going to annotate this with a database so that our Hilt and DI will be able to identify that, and the entities is going to be the country entity that we created just before. So country entity dot class. Okay, so and we'll have only one version of this database for now. So in case our app begins to grow in the future, we'll be able, that is why you're seeing this error. We need to specify the version, and it's just one. So with that, our database is all set up, but we're going to be creating an abstract function of our data access object, which is our DAO. So here we're going to call abstract function, and we'll call this our country DAO. Okay, so and this function is going to be from our country DAO. We have not created that, so we're going to create that right now. Okay, so let's create that. Yeah, it's part of the local package. So now we have our country DAO here, which is going to be an interface. It's not a class. So it's going to be interfacing from the database query, so from other part of our app. So, and we also need to annotate that with DAO from room database as well. So with that said, now this is where we're going to put all the queries, whatever manipulation, however we want to manipulate our data, like inserting the data which we're going to insert from our API services here. Then also if we want to query data, like in the search section here, in this search section, this is where we're going to create that function, and also to load this list of countries. We're going to do all that now. So let's write down the implementation or how we want this to happen. So this is going to be a suspend function as we're using coroutine. So this is going to be like insert countries, and this is going to take the countries parameter. So, and it's going to inherit from the list of the country entity that we've already created. So this is how we insert our countries. So now we're going to use that same function again, the insert function. And this insert function, we're going to use on conflict strategy to determine what happens in case we're loading a fresh data. In case we're loading a fresh data from our API and we have already existing data, maybe there is an update on the API on conflict strategy. So if we have an existing data that is already cached on our room database, but we got a notification that the API service have maybe added new data or updated existing data that we need to update so that our app will be up to date, then we'll replace the existing data in our room database. So that is what this on conflict strategy is for. So down here, we need to get all the countries. So we're going to do that query here, and the query is going to be select all from the countries, which is the entity, the name of our database table that we created in the entity class. So here is also going to be a suspend function that we want it to run on a different thread from the main thread so that we won't have race conditions. So this is countries, and it's going to take no parameter, but it's going to return a list of all the countries, all the country parameters that we have requested from our API. So that's done now. Then the last one, which we're going to use in this demonstration, is going to be to get the country by the code, so that once the country is clicked here, once you click on the country here, we use the code to track this country and then display the details on our details page. Okay, so now this is going to be select all from countries, which is our table. So select all countries where, that's the condition, where the country code is equal to the selected country code. Okay, so now we're going to create then the suspend function, which we'll call get country by code, because that's what it is. So, and it's going to have a parameter of code, which is a string, and it's going to return the country entity. That's the parameters of that particular country. Okay, so that is our DAO. These are the three main queries that we need to perform on our data. So it's not a very big app, so it's just a simple app for demonstration. So now we've completed our local database. Then the mapper, in this mapper we're going to map the entity to our DTO, and also map, because we're implementing the domain layer, we're also going to have another model in the domain layer. So in the next chapter we'll get to that. Okay, all right, welcome back. So we'll close up this to maintain a clean interface here. So now we need to create our mapper class, and we're going to create that. It's going to be an object. So it's going to be an object, and I'll call it a country mapper because we're just talking about country here. All right, so now in this mapper we're going to map, because due to achieve separation of concern, we're going to map each layer from one model type to the other, because now we're loading our data from an API, and our room database might not will not allow some of the data types that is coming from our API. So that is why we need to map these data classes from one to the other, so that we don't have any conflict. But before to finish this up in one go, we need to go to the domain layer. We need another model, because in that domain layer we need also another model so that we can map it accordingly, so that we can also display this in our UI layer. So in this we're going to create another data class, which is going to be our domain layer model class. So it's going to be called, let's call it country. So in this country we're going to have our name variable, the model class, data class in the domain layer. Okay, and now it's time to create our mapper, so that we can map all this together, so that the data, there won't be conflict of data from our database and what room requires. Okay, so firstly we're going to start with mapping our DTO to the entity. So let's just add a little comment here to tell you what this is. The DTO to the entity. Okay, so now here we're going to create a function that we'll call country DTO dot to entity, to country entity. So here is going to return our country entity for this function. So now here we're going to return country entity, and in our country entity we'll just implement, it doesn't give me that option yet. Okay, no problems. So country code is still same as country code. Okay, so let's see if it gives us the options instead of, no, we'll have to type it out, unfortunately. So name is equal to name, because we have two versions, name dot common name for the name, then the official name is going to be name dot official name, right? Then after that we'll have our continent, and our continent is the region. So for the API, the continent is known as the region. So then the sub-region is also known as the sub-region. Okay, then in our flags or PNG we have flags dot PNG. So the other one, flags .svg, we have flags.svg. Okay, so after that, then our capital is going to be capital, and is going to could be nullable join to string. Was serializing this, so, and it's going to be comma separated. So the next one is our population, and it's going to be population. It's still population. Then the area is still area, and languages is still languages. It's giving me an error here. Then languages could be nullable as well. Dot values, which is nullable, join to string, and you have this comma separator. Let's use Elvis operator. Add this. That's fine. So why is this error here? Let's find out. So let's look at our country entity. Not here, the model class, and country DTO. We are supposed to annotate one of them as nullable, which is our capital. Let's check the DTO. Yeah. Okay, let's check entity and see where we got it wrong. So the capital should be denoted as nullable. That is why we're having the error. You see, the error is gone now. Then also, what's wrong with the population? Requires string. Now we're passing long. So where did we pass the string? Population is long for the entity. Population is long, not string. And the area is also double. That's my bad. Okay, so I guess all the error is gone now. Why this one? It's replaced with .call. Okay, so this is going to be nullable. Yeah, I think that's these are all taken care of now. So now we've successfully mapped our DTO to entity. Then the next one is to map our entity to the domain, which is this domain model that we've just created right here. So let's quickly do that. Add a little comment here, and it's entity to domain, right? So now here we're going to have a function that we'll call country entity dot to country, which is our model, the domain layer model, and it will return the country. And here we're going to return country, and we're going to have these following parameters as well. The name in the country is equal to name as well. And then we have, so the code is going to be our country code in the entity class. Then the next one is continent, and it's still continent in our entity class. Then the next one is the capital or the flag URL, I guess. and it's going to, we're using the PNG one, not the SVG. Okay, so now in the capital is capital, we use LVS operator, and this can be empty as well. Then the population is population, and also the area is area. So the languages, we need to split the languages using comma to split one language from the other. Okay, so that's the delimiter for our languages in case the country has more than one language. Then official name is official name. Then the subregion is going to subregion. It's going to be subregion. We'll still use LVS operator here, and this can be empty as well. Okay, so that's our mapping done from the entity to the domain model. So then the last one is the DTO to the domain as well. So we're going to map our DTO to the domain model. Okay, let's make this capital, and this is going to be a function, and it's going to be country DTO dot to country, which is our domain model. So, and this is going to return the country as well for this. So I'll just copy this and just edit that so that we don't stay here too long for this. So that's our mapper. Then now we need to create an extension function that is going to, that takes the list of the country entity, the country DTO, to the country entity list as well for us. So outside of this country mapper object, we're going to create some extension functions for our list mapping. Now that we've created that, we need two functions, and one of them is going to be list of country DTO, country DTO. So dot to country entity list, to country entity here, just like this. So then the next one is going to be list of country entity dot to country list, and it's going to map, you just map it to the country. So what we have just done here is to take the list of the country entity, so to map it to the list of our database object, which converts each country entity to a country. That's the domain object that we're using to country. So, and at the end, this is going to return a list of all the countries for proper separation of concern, and so that we don't accidentally use the wrong model in processing our data and reading it from the API. Okay, so we can, with this, you can easily swap one model with the other, so it doesn't matter which app you design it for. So with that said, we have created our mapper. The next thing we're going to create now is to flesh out our domain layer. And once we flesh out our domain layer, then we can now implement our repository for the data layer, which we'll get to the next chapter. So I will see you on the next chapter. Okay. All right. Welcome back. So in this section, we're going to be fleshing out our domain layer, putting all the classes like the repository, the use cases, and some of our state management resource file, which is going to tell the user whether data is being loaded or whether there is an error, or supply the list from our API. So let's deal with that now. And once we'll finish part of it, we'll be building our domain layer and our data layer to finish up our data layer at the same time, because the next thing we're supposed to add in our data layer, let's just quickly create that package, is the repository implementation. So the repository now is dependent on the domain layer repository. So because of that, I want to create the domain layer repository first of all before I move to creating the implementation in our data layer. So first of all, because as you know from layered architecture, the MVVM, the domain layer is kind of a shield between the data layer and the presentation layer. So our repository here is going to be an interface. So we're going to call that country repository. All right, so that's the interface for the country repository, and we're going to have just two functions here. Those functions are just to get the list of the countries and also the getting a particular country by code that is going to display in our details page. Okay, so here in our repository we're going to create two functions, and the first function is going to be a suspend function. This suspend function, we're going to call it get countries. So in this get countries is going to return, this need to be uppercase, countries. Okay, so it's going to return a flow. So why do we use flow here? We use flow here because the flow is going to be reactive to our data changes. This is why flow is important. Coroutine flow. Oh, I think I imported the wrong one. So it's coroutine flow. So here, once there is any data change, which we're going to manage with our resource wrapper. So here we're going to call resource. We have not created that yet. So it's going to be resource. This is going to be our wrapper for state management to show if this loading, if it's successful, or if the data we're querying from the server, if there is an error. So this is why we're using flow, so that we'll have a live update of the situation of the data from our database. Okay, so and that is going to return a list of countries from our country model here. So these resources, we're going to create these resources as part of our domain layer. So let's quickly create that here, the resource file here. So in this resource file is going to be called resources, like we've already called it there. So it's going to be a resource, and it's going to be a sealed class. So have to include sealed class here, sealed. Okay, so and this is going to return a generic type, so it could be any type. So like if you look at our repository here, we're returning a list of countries. So in case you can return any type, so this means that this is independent of our code, so you can still copy this resource wrapper and use it in another project. So that is why we are using the generic type here, so that it can take any type that any data type you are using. Okay, so this is loading and it's going to return generic as well, and that is going to be resource, so return the same resource type. Okay, so then the next one is a data class, which is going to be success. So in case the data is loaded successfully, then the data can also be any type, but it's going to have a variable which is data, and that data is of any type as well, so that we can reuse this as many times as possible in different projects. Okay, so the last one is another data class, which is going to be an error in case there is maybe the internet went out or we can't reach the server at that point in time, so that we can return a message to the user, or a message that we can see on our backend to show that there was an error when we're querying our data. So, and it's going to have another parameter of data that is of the generic type as well. So, and that data can be nullable in case it's none of the regular errors that we were used to in our project. So with that resource done now, our get countries is now wrapped. The data we're expecting is now wrapped on this resource to either when it's successful or it's still loading, so that we can wait for the data to be supplied to us. So now let's create the other function that we'll use to get each country, the country that we've selected, so that we can display the data in our details page. And it's going to have a parameter code, which is also a string, and that will come in a flow as well. So we will return a flow of resources, of list of the resource is going to return the country, the particular country that we've selected. So this is our domain layer repository all done. So now we can actually go back and implement our repository, because the dependent class is now created. Okay, so in that manner we're going to create that now. So first of all, we're going to let's create a class, which is a concrete class, and we'll call that class country repository implementation. Okay, so that is going to be a class, and that class we're going to inject our constructor here from our JavaX. So the constructor, we're going to now have some parameters. So now this implementation is going to make use of our API services, because we're getting our data from the server. Then also our data access object, which is the country DAO. Then we are going to use coroutine dispatcher also to dispatch this data when they arrive. Okay, so private val, let's call this API service here like this. Then the next one is private val, and we're going to call this country DAO like this. So the last one is private var. So you know why we're making this private? So that other part of the app cannot access it because of separation of concern. So let's add, this is coroutine dispatcher. Yeah, that's the one. So right here we have, it's going to return the dispatcher.io from our OKTP. Okay, dispatchers.io. yeah, so these are all the parameters that we need. So, and they are private, so mean we can, other part of our app like the presentation layer cannot reach them or know anything about them. So here we now return our country repository, which we've just created now. So now we need to implement all the member methods, which is to get the countries and get the country by code. So these are the two methods we are going to implement. So first of all, we will still use our flow and wrap it in our resources to return the list of the countries that we're looking for. So, and this is going to be equal to flow. So now we have to implement this method here. And first of all, what is going to happen is that we'll start with loading the state to notify that the data is fetching. So because once we send it, it depends on the speed of the internet or how quick the server can load. That will determine what's going to return to us. So resource.loading. So you have to just to notify that the data is being loaded from the start. So now, first of all, we'll try to fetch the data from our local database to know if we have this data already. Maybe this is not the first time we're loading the app. So let's put a little comment here so that you can remember. So try to fetch data from local database. Okay, so down here we're going to call var and create a variable called local countries, which is the countries that is loaded from our local database, right? And we assign that to our country DAO because we're querying our database to know if we already have this country. So, and in that regards, our country DAO is going to serve us to get all the countries. That's if there is any existing country in our database. So, but if there is not, so if local countries dot is not empty, so what happens? So if there is country list already in our database, what do we want to have? We want it to emit the files, like the list of the countries that are already in our database, instead of querying the server, loading the data so that we can have offline capability in our app. So now, because we have an existing data is going to be successful, then when it's successful, what happens? We call the local countries dot, we'll map it to our country list that we created initially in our mapper. Okay, so that is how we load our data. Like you can see now, you can see this is all this list you're seeing here is from the data that is already in the local database. It's not like it's loaded. So each time even if you reload this app, you're still calling from, unless there is any data change in the server. Okay, so that the user will see something instead of waiting forever to see for the data, because it is not a very good user experience. Because if someone comes to your app and there's nothing to show, they will be like, what am I here for? you might lose them. So but once they see that there is a data, then on the back end the data is refreshed from the API. Okay, so now if the data, let's fetch the data from the server in case if there is no data in our remote, maybe the app is being installed for the first time. So from remote data source, yeah. So now we're going to use try catch to do that in case there is an error. So we'll create another variable which we'll call the remote countries. That's the countries from the remote database. And so how do we access our API? You call the API services, which we've created and we've called as a parameter here. And once we call the API services, we'll still have that method to get all countries in our API services. So this will now fetch a brand new data from the API. So now that we'll fetch the data from the API, we need to save it back in our local database for data persistence and offline capabilities. Okay, so we'll call the country DAO dot insert countries. So we're inserting back the countries that we've loaded from our API. You see how we are persisting our data. So we'll call remote countries because of our data mapping, the data transfer object that we've done in our mapper. We can now call this to the country entity list. That's those extension functions that we created then. So after that, now that we've saved the new data to the database, then we need to update our app. Okay, so we now emit. Now it's still successful again, so we'll call success resource. Yeah, success. So then we just map that again to our mapper as well. So here we're going to call remote countries, which is our variable dot map. Okay, so and this is IT to country, yeah, just like that. So this now emits our new data to the app. So in case there is an error, let's catch that error before it eludes us. Okay, right here we catch the exception if there is an exception. So we now give the emit the error to the user and tell the user there is something wrong dot error. So and in this error, what is it? That means we couldn't load data from our API. So we just tell the user that we couldn't load data from the API. Load data. So in case there is any message, then we can also pass that error message to the user, or when we check our log card to see what kind of error is that. So we just use localized message here. Okay, so that we can actually it will help us in our debugging to find out what really happened. So now we need to run this flow in the IO dispatcher that we've called originally. So flow on, and we'll call the dispatcher here. Okay, why is this error? How do you say? So it says change return type of enclosing function country repository implementation to get countries to flow. So it's asking us to change the flow to any flow, not list of countries, which is what is required here. But what we provided was any kind of flow. So let's troubleshoot that now. So I think the issue we are having here is with this error, because when you go to the resource, we're supposed to return this sealed class, the resource class here, and pass the generic type here. So that is why we're having that error. You see, the error is gone now. So now, firstly, we have tried to check if there are countries in our local database, and if not, then we'll fetch the data from our remote data source, which is what we've done here. So let's move on to the next and get the country by code. So here we're also going to return that flow, assign this to a flow, okay, so that could come from the, so here we're going to pass this to a flow like this. Then here we'll do similar thing. We'll emit the loading, the resource loading, to show if we're loading the data from the database or from the API. Okay, so right down here we'll also try to see if this particular country is already in our local database. So here I can copy this, just the same thing, something similar, tries to fetch country from the local database. Okay, so now we're going to create another variable here that is called local country. Okay, so in this local country we'll call our DAO again to check if this country exists in our local database. .get country by code, but now we have to pass the code parameter here. So down here we're now going to check if that country, which is our local country, is equal to null. That means it's empty, it's not there. Then we're going to emit that is not, sorry, this is if it's not null. First of all, that means we've found our country, that's what it means. Then let us emit that the value, which is the country and the details of that country, and tell, that means our query was successful. Okay, so local country dot to country, then we'll assign it to our country, because this country is now what the user sees. This is how the data model we're going to be displaying on the screen. So that is done. Now next off, this might be a little bit redundant, but in case there is an error, the country that is in the list is not there, we can also give the user a little message to tell them that the country is not there, but that's unlikely, but in case. Okay, so local country is equal to null. That means the selected country is null, there's no data, but it's on the list. So we emit resource dot error. Okay, then give the user a little message, country, that the country is not found. Okay, then if there is an exception, maybe due to network error, which is also unlikely because we're caching our data in a database, but sometimes things can go wrong, you know, so we'll be able to cache that error and emit telling the user resource dot error that there has been an error. So say error fetching country. Okay, so we can also state what error is that in case if we have such information. Okay, So that's it. Then also this will still run this on the IO dispatcher. Flow on dispatcher. Okay, so this is our repository implementation done here. So let's optimize our imports, make sure everything looks nice and clean. So that's our repository implementation. So at this point, I would say we have finished everything about our data layer. Our data layer is completed now. So the next thing we need to create here is we've created our model, which is a country class, data class in the model, in the domain layer. Then also we have also created our country repository, and also so now we have created our resources here. So now we are going to create our use cases. How do we use this? What functions are we going to use in our view models? So that is what we're going to create now. So now we're going to create another package that I will call use cases. So now in our use cases, we're going to, because we are using separation of concern, we want to separate all the business logic away from our UI. So with these use cases, instead of calling our repository directly from the view model, we're going to call the use cases so that we can abstract the business logic completely from the presentation layer. Okay, so now the first one is to get countries use case, which is where we'll start. So, and it's going to be a class. So let's call it get countries use case. Okay, so in this get country use case, say uses case. Let me rename this is before we continue. Okay, it's still requesting uppercase there. Okay, let's do that since we've started. So that's fine now. So now what we're going to do here is that we're going to inject our constructor so that we can call we can call our repository on here. Okay, so and in our here we're going to create a private var, which is going to be our repository. That's our access to our data layer. Okay, so now we're going to call the invoke. This invoke is an operator function to make it easier to call the use case as a function in the view model. So this is where the use case delegates the actual data fetching logic to the repository. Okay, so now we're going to create that function here, which is the suspend function. We'll call it suspend operator function. Okay, so which is invoke, right? So now it's going to be a flow as well, because we're passing our data through it. Then we use our resource wrapper to return a list of countries. Okay, a list of country, that's the domain model. Okay, so and in that, in the body, we're going to return our repository because that is where the main functions are, and we're going to call get countries in our repository. So this is where the actual data fetching happens, but just to call so that this could be called as a function in our view model, we have to use these suspend operator functions. Okay, so that is our get countries use case done. So the next one is to, I think I've done something wrong. This is supposed to be in the domain layer. Pardon me for that. What did I do? Yeah, refactor that. Okay, so now in this use case, we're going to create the get country by code use case, which we're going to use to fetch our country details as well. So just like we did in the get countries use case, it's just a similar thing, but this one is going to be get country by code use case. Okay, so this is our get country by code use case. Again, we're going to inject our constructor and we're going to pass our repository once again. So it's going to be private var repository country repository here. Yeah, so in the body, the same suspend operator function again, to use invoke as a function. Okay, so invoke, yeah, and it's going to return. This invoke is going to have parameter, which is the code that we use to identify each, which is the primary key that we're going to use to identify each country when selected. So here is going to pass the flow again, and our resource wrapper, then we pass the country, the particular country that we're interested in calling. So in the body down here, we're going to return our repository as usual, dot get country by code. Okay, then we'll pass code here as our parameter. Why is this why is there an error? Says no argument, no type argument expected for class flow. So let's go back to our repository and see why. Okay, I think it seems like I imported the wrong flow. Yeah, concurrent flow. Yeah, that's why we have the error. So it's important you know you import the right one. Yes, this is the right one. So the error is gone. So make sure you import the right dependency when you're doing this, because if not, you're going to have all these annoying errors. So let me close all the tabs and let's now arrange our domain layer and all the classes where they are supposed to be. So we need we need two more packages. One is the model and the other is the repository. So in the model, we have this country class. The repository has this repository class, just to make it look nice here. So now we're finished with our domain, and we've also finished with our data model. Before we move to the presentation model, let's now implement. Before we move to our presentation layer, let's now implement the DI, the dependency injection, that is going to inject all those classes for us. So let's do that before we can now go to the presentation layer fully and also implement that. So here, this is going to be an object, and I usually call it in my implementation app model because it's only one of these modules. So this object is our app model, which is our dependency injection. So all these classes that we have been creating and the interfaces, we need to create the dependencies, which because of with Hilt, we now don't have to go through writing all those boilerplate codes. With this, we can just inject them into our project. So here we're going to annotate this with module from Dagger. Then as well, we installing, which is also from Dagger Hilt, and it's a single component. Yeah. So with class. So with that, our app module is all set up. So now, first of all, we're going to provide our country the retrofit from our country API services that we created. So we use add provides from Dagger, then also add singleton from JavaX. Then we create the function, and the function is provide country API services, because that is what we need here. API service, and it's going to, it doesn't have any parameter, then we'll call it's going to return country API services, and inside that we're going to return our retrofit client dot create. So create all the dependencies that we need for our retrofit here. Then after that, we need to create our database, our actual database. So now here we're going to use add provides and add singleton as well. So here is going to be fun provide country database. Okay, so and in this one we have at application context, the context of our application. So here we're going to pass context of type context. Okay, so now, and this is going to return our country database which we created earlier, and in the body we're going to return our room dot database builder, because we've not built our database before. Then pass context. Then also we're going to call our country database class of Java. So then also we're going to add the name of our database. So let's call it country underscore DB, which is the name of our database. Then outside of that, we're going to call dot fallback to destructive migration. So then we call build. Oh, this is deprecated now. So we can import this and undo that. So as you can see, this is to inform Room that it is allowed to destructively recreate our database tables from specific starting schema version. But now we have only one version. So in case our database changes, we are instructing Room to recreate a new database, so that we don't keep feeding our users, our app users, with redundant data, old data that is not updated. Okay, so in case we change our database schema along the line. All right, so now this is it. Then let's also create our DAO, provide our DAO in our dependency as well. So it's going to be fun provide country DAO. and here we're going to pass our database, country database. Then we return our country DAO as well. Then here we'll return the database dot country DAO, because from there we can reach the query our database. Okay, so the next one is our repositories, our use cases. That's the ones that are remaining. So in our repository here, we'll provide a singleton, and it's going to be fun. Provide country repository. No space, brother. Okay, so in this one, we're going to call the API services, the country as parameters, then also our country DAO, because these are the things we need to use our repository. Okay, so then don't forget to inherit from the country repository that we created earlier. Okay, so but in the body we're going to return, the country repository implementation. Where are you? Okay, yeah, country repository implementation. Then now we pass the API services and the country DAO. So you see how everything is linked together nicely. Now, so the next one is to provide our use cases, which we're going to use in our ViewModel shortly. So here is function provide get countries use case. Okay, so here, oh, I missed E here. So here we're going to pass our repository as we did before, then but we're going to return the get country use case, plural there. So return, we're going to return the get country use case, get countries use case here, then pass our repository. So that's the right one. So the same thing or a similar thing we're going to do here. So I'm going to copy this so that we don't waste too much time on this. So it's get country by code use case. That's the one. So, and here don't forget to return the actual one. So this is the one. And here we're also going to get country by code use case, then pass our repository. That's everything we need for our dependency injection right here. Okay, so with that, now we have created every single thing from our data layer up to our domain layer is all set, and our dependency injection is also set. So now it's time to implement our presentation layer, or our UI, so to say. So I will encourage you to go take a break, just a short break, grab something and come back. If you're following along, let's continue on the next chapter. Okay, welcome back. So in this section we're going to now show the world what we've been building, all the things we've been building on our backend, how to call up this data and display it on our presentation layer. So first of all, we'll start with our states. We're going to create the list screen, which is going to be our home screen, like this screen here. The list screen is this screen, and now we need to collect the state of our data. So then this detail screen as well is going to have its own state as well. So let's start with creating that now. So here we're going to have a class which I'm going to call the country list state for the country list. Okay, so now this country list state is going to be a data class, because just like we had the wrapper, the resource wrapper in our domain layer. So here this is going to have some parameters, and now we're going to have val countries. Our country is going to return a list of countries here from our domain country. Here we need to import our class. So now, and this could also be, if it doesn't find anything, it should return an empty list. Then we also have a variable for the filtered countries, because by the time we were searching, let's go back. So like now we want to search, let's search for Chicago. Is that a country? No. Okay, let's search for Chile, for instance. Like now we want to have a variable that will return this list, like now that we'll search for Chile. So now this is going to be called filtered countries that has the same name or similar name. Okay, so like now this is just one country because we wrote it in full. If we type something like CHI, which has other countries as with that starting alphabet, you see we'll have a list of China, Czech Republic, and all that, and then Chile. Okay, so that is why this is going to be a list. So it's going to return a list of countries. So, and this can also be empty as well, return empty list if you can't find anything that looks like it. So like now, if you add comma to this, search, you say no countries found, because there is no country with that kind of letter. Okay, so the next one is for our search query, which is whatever we enter here. So it's going to be val, and it's going to be search query, and it's going to return a string because we're going to be searching, and this could also be an empty string. Okay, then also we'll have is loading, say that our data is loading, and this is going to be a boolean, and we assign that, initialize that to false. So the last one is val error, in case there is error displaying the data on our UI. So we can initialize that to null as well. So these are our country list states done. So the next one is for we to create the state of our details screen. So let us create that, because we're going to use all these. We'll call this, we're going to use we'll be needing this in our view model. Okay, and this is also a data class. So now we'll have the val. The first parameter here is the country, and this could be nullable in case, like we said earlier, if the country we've selected is null. So then is loading is a boolean, which is also false, and also error and the error is a string, and which could be null, so we initialize this to null. Okay, so these are our states, the states we're going to be needing here. Then again, let's go quickly to create our country list view model as well, and this is going to be country list view model. And so in this country list view model, we're going to annotate this with our @Hilt view model, because we're going to be using Hilt here because we're going to be injecting our constructor as well, so that we can reach all those use cases that we've created, which we are going to call here as a private var. So we're still abstracting that. So get country by get countries use case, that is it. So, and don't forget that this is going to inherit from the ViewModel class. Okay, so now right here we're going to initialize our states. So private var, which is the state we're collecting from our domain layer, so we're going to make it private for data security. So, and this is going to be mutable flow. Then we call our country states, country list states that we've just created now. Okay, so you see how everything is tied together. Then now we're going to make this public. Then the state will call state flow, and we pass our country list state again. Okay, so, and we'll assign that to our private state dot as state flow. This is how we're going to collect our state that we're going to use in our UI. So now we're going to initialize using this init block. We're going to load our country, so that once our app is fully loaded, the countries are loaded, and also once there is a state change, maybe we change to landscape, it won't lose our data. That is why we're loading it initially here. So now here we're going to use coroutine to manage our flow, the flow of our data in the threads. So we don't want it to run in a main thread when we're loading this data, so that our app doesn't lag. So we call ViewModel scope. So we need to import ViewModel scope. So ViewModel scope from ViewModel.launch. Okay, so here we're going to call get countries use case dot collect. So this collect is going to return a result. That's whatever the result is, if the data was loaded or not. So we'll use when statement for that. So we'll pass our result. So when result is true, that is, so is resource dot success. So whenever it's true, that means our data was loaded successfully. Okay, so then we now load our states. So state.value, we assign that to our public state. Let's add some space here. Our public state.value dot copy. Okay, so in that copy, we're going to call our countries, and we'll assign the results.data. So the result of the data that was passed, and this can also, using LVS operator, this can also return an empty list. Okay, So down here is loading. We'll set is loading to false because we already have the data that we're looking for. So what if there is an error? So down here is, if there is an error, we couldn't get the data we asked for, we need to load the message for the user to tell them that something happened. That means they are not getting the result they were seeking. So we pass the state dot value dot copy again. So we'll pass error, and it's going to be result dot whatever error message, it's not data message, that was returned, maybe network error or our database is filled up or anything. So then we set the loading to false, because if there was error, that means nothing is coming back apart from the error we already have. But if not, then that means our resource dot loading maybe is loading the data, maybe it's taking some time to bring back the data for us, so we should wait. Okay, dot value, still assign this to state, the public state dot value dot copy, then is loading is true at this point. So either we'll show them a circular progress bar to tell them that something is happening in the background, so that they won't lose faith and leave our app. Okay, so now we'll create another function for our onSearch query change. When there is a change in our onSearch, so that means the user have typed something on that outline text field that we'll have there. So what happens? So we'll pass query, which is going to be a string. Then we'll pass our private states dot value, then assign that to our public state dot value dot copy. So it means, what is our search query? Our search query is the query they have typed, which is a string, then which should return the filtered countries. So if the query is empty, now we're checking if the query is empty. So if the query is empty, what should happen? That means we should pass the state, the public state dot value. Oh dear me, what am I doing here today? Okay, dot value dot countries. So meaning that there is no, like at this point now, if we clear this, it returns the list of the countries that we have already. Okay, so there is no search query at all. So now, or else, then if it's not empty, then we need to pass our public state. Oh man, today is interesting. So our public states dot value dot countries. So that means we're returning the country. So but filter the country that we're going to return based on the search query that the user have entered. So now the country is country dot name. So we're matching what the query they have entered by the name they have entered to search on our list if there is any country bearing that name. And also, what are we going to, so some people might want to type in uppercase later. So we pass the query and we say ignore case, meaning that in case the user decides to use uppercase, that is still fine. Just find a country that have those characters. Or if the country.code, in case they are using the country code to search, dot contains uppercase again. So what do? We say pass the query and we say ignore case. So what we are interested in using regular expression is to make sure that the query that we are passed, whichever one they used, we should still recognize it as long as the characters are the same. So if the person is searching with continent, we're still fine with that. But if they decide to do it in upper case, whatever, we still want it to go through as a valid query. Okay, so that is what we have just done here now. So if we go to our app now, if we start with Argentina is AG, I guess. You see, so we still recognize it. It gives us Madagascar, any country that has AG, Paraguay, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda, Nicaragua. So all those ones. So if we use Africa, you see all the countries in Africa has been filtered here. If we use Asia, Taiwan, Indonesia, Laos, China, Yemen, Uzbekistan, I don't know, Sri Lanka. So that's how this function works. So that is why we can search with anything, continent, country code, or the full country name. So whatever it is. So that is what we have just done now. Then now that we've done that, our view model for the list is complete. Let's optimize our import to make it clean. So the next one is to create a view model for the details page. So the details view model, what am I doing here? So the details view model, we call that country, oh no space, details view model. So we also annotate this with our Hilt view model. Okay, so because we're going to inject a constructor which will have a private var, which this is going to be get user by country code use case. Yes, so we're also going to inherit from our view model class. Okay, so down here now we're going to also call our state. So oh no, this is going to be underscore, and this is going to be mutable state flow. Okay, then we pass our country detail states that we just created before. So that's down. So we'll make this public so that we can access it in our UI. So, and this is going to be of type state flow. Okay, and this state flow is going to have the country detail state to determine what state our data is in. So then our public, our private mutable state flow, we're going to as state flow as usual. So after that, we're going to create a function here, and that function is going to load our country. Yeah, And now we're going to pass a code which is also a string for our search. Then as usual, we use our ViewModel scope dot launch, and here we're going to call our use case. Then we pass the code parameter dot collect. So, and this is also going to return a result, and that result we use when again. So when result is true, what do we expect? So is resource.success. That means our resource, our data was loaded successfully. Then we pass our private state dot value as usual, then assign it to our public state dot value dot copy, and also here we have the parameter country, which is going to return the result of the country data. So, and also we have is loading at this point is false because we have the data we are seeking. So down here, in case it's error, then resource dot error. So we're going to pass our error message like we did before. Sorry, my bad, missed that curly braces. Okay, so we're going to return our error. We haven't passed our state yet, so our public state dot value, assign that to state dot value dot copy. So our error is going to be result dot message like we've done before. Then our is loading here is false because we have something. Then the last one, that is if the resource is loading the data, the user should know that something is happening in the background and wait a little bit. Okay, so our public state dot value assigned to our state dot value dot copy, then is loading here is true. Okay, right, so this is our country details view model all done. So now we have our state, we have our view model. So the next thing we need to do is to create our details screen and our list screen, which is going to display the data that we have. But before we do that, because we're going to be reusing some widgets, we're going to create a component package, which is where we're going to put our reusable widgets. So we'll call that component. So in this component, we're going to create a Kotlin file where we're going to we'll call this our country widgets, because this is where all the widgets that we're going to reuse in this app is going to be contained in. So now in our country widgets, the first thing we need to create is our country card, which is this card here that has this detail. It has the flag, then it has the name, the full name, and the country code of the country, then the capital of the country, then the continent, just to give us a little insight of what data is contained in this widget. So this is not going to be a class, this is supposed to be a file. So here at composable, and it's going to be fun, and we'll call this our country card, because it's our country card. We're going to use it. It's going to have some parameters, which is country of the type country, and also on click, so that we can use that to get the action when the card is clicked. On click is going to be an empty. It's going to be empty. So then finally, our awesome modifier, we'll assign that to modifier as well. So now in our body, we're going to use a card. So we use a card, and our card is going to have some parameters. So modifier dot fill max width, because we want it to fill the maximum width of the page, dot padding. Our padding is going to be an overall padding of 8.dp. You need to import dp. Okay, so then lastly, we want to make it clickable. So on click, we pass on click, then we'll assign that to on click up here. So then I think we should use this other modifier, the one created above. Yeah, okay. So now we need to add some elevation to our card to help it stand out, even though it stands out by default. But I like to add my own card default dot elevated card elevation. Then let's pass 4dp to that. So then we have the shape. You see this rounded corner here, so that it will be nice and clean, because it seems sharp. I don't really like sharp edges. So dot shapes dot medium. Okay, so that's it for our card. Then here we're going to use a row, because these are going to line side by side. The map goes first, then this data, then as well this arrow, right arrow there. So we need to layer that out with a row. So in this row, the row has its own modifier dot, let's add some padding to that row. Then we want to add a general padding of 16.dp, then also some vertical alignment. So we want it to align center vertically on the page. So with that done, I think I should close this down and make this full page. I always forget. So here, the next thing we need to do is we need to call our flag first, because that's the first element. Let me leave this. So we need to call our flag, and we're going to use, that's why we imported that dependency coil in our build.gradle. So here we're going to use a sync image. Yeah, a sync image, you see. So if you highlight, you see it's from coil. Okay, so we use that to load our flag. So here let me put all this in a fresh line. Then our model here is going to be our country dot flag URL. Okay, so that's the URL of the country of the flag. So this is just going to be for screen reader purposes. Let's add this country flag so that the screen reader can know which country flag is that. Dot name of the country, yeah. So flag off if it's Grenada, as it is here. Once the screen reader reads this, to know that it is flag of Grenada. Okay, so let's continue. Then after that, let's add some sizing to that so that it doesn't fill up our page. I think this one seems like, okay, it comes according to the flag. This one looks big, while this one looks very small. This one looks small. So, but let's try to increase that number and see if it's going to make any tangible change to our design. So this dot size, let's pass 52.dp as the size of the flag. Then, and let's clip the flag. So we're going to clip the flag and make it material theme. In this design, I used material theme dot shapes dot small. Let me use medium here and see what's going to look like in our own design. If it's too big, then well, we'll change it back to small. Okay, so now the next thing is, let's make sure it fits. So content scale dot fit, so that it doesn't overspread here. Okay, so that's done. That's our flag now. So for us to create this text, we have to include it, put it together in a column so that it can appear like this, one on top of the other. So, but that column is still going to be part of the child element of our row. So the row is still the parent of that column. So, but first of all, let's add some spacers. This so that we can have this breathing space here, so that it's not squashed together. So let's use spacer. So we use modifier dot width, and we'll pass 16 dp to that. Okay, or width, not weight. Okay, I use the intrinsic size, but all I need is dp. All right, so that's sorted. So down here we're going to use column, and we'll have some column parameters as well. All right, so in our column we just want to add a weight of 1, which is the float. So this is modifier dot weight, we add 1f. That's all we need in this column. So down here we're going to use a text element. So here we use test. So in this test, the test is going to be, this is where we're going to call, so it's going to be a string, and this is our country dot name, right? So comma, then the country code as it is there. So it's going to be country dot code. Okay, so that is our first title there. So because it's our first title, we want to make it bold to stand out. So because of that, let's add some styling. So material theme dot typography, let's make it bigger than the other subtext, other substring that are going to come under it. So then we are going to make the font weight. So the font weight is bold, so we want it bold. That is why it stands out like this than the other ones. So let me just copy this and edit it. So the second one is going to be our capital. So we just need one of these, right? So this is going to be capital. So let me add capital to tell you that what you're looking at is the capital of that particular country. Yeah. So now we're going to, first of all, let me add another spacer here so that this will have some breathing gap. I don't think that's necessary. Let's continue, but this is not going to be bold and this is going to be body small. Or let's do body medium because that looks like really tiny. Okay, so it's tiny. Then also let's add some color elements to make it gray out like that. Material theme dot color scheme dot on surface dot copy, and let's reduce that to 0.7 alpha. Okay, so with that now we have color scheme. So let me copy this particular one and add the last element right there. So this is going to be the continent, and this is country.continent. Okay, so and every other thing is the same. So that's done now. So let us add this image, but this image is going to be outside of this column, which is here. So let's add that icon, sorry, not image. So that icon is going to be image vector. Let's put this on a new line. So this is going to be icons dot default dot arrow forward. Okay, so it's deprecated but it's still functional. So now we're going to just add a simple text here, view country detail. Okay, so then after that, let's add a little tint to it because it's not clickable. So let the user, I don't think, but the card itself is clickable, so still works. So here we're going to use material theme dot color scheme dot, just like we did with the text on surface, dot copy. Let's add the same like the text. Okay, so that is, our card is done now. So the next thing we need to create that we're going to reuse later in this project is our details. These details, so we're going to add it as part of this widget too. Okay, so we come down here, we create another composable and it's going to be fun, and we'll call it country details content. Detail content and pro. Let's make it like that. Okay, so this is going to have a parameter of its own as well, which calls country as well. Okay, then we have our modifier and we'll assign that to modifier. Okay, all right, so in the body here we're going to have use the async image again because we're going to, like, we will still need to call up the flag again. So here we're going to call up the flag, then have the card, a kind of card again that is going to have much details to it. So right here we're going to make nest all this in a column so that they can appear like this, one on top of the other. All right, so here I'm going to use a column and that column we have modifier, we have some padding, dot padding, we'll add 10.dp here. Then also we have some vertical arrangement. I want arrangement to be sent to the center. Then also some horizontal alignment. Want it to be aligned center horizontally as well. So that is the column parameters here. Then after that, the first element we need here is our async image again. So we'll send this to new lines and down here. I think I imported the wrong one, so we don't need this image loader. So here is still our country dot flag URL. Okay, then here we still need to tell the user what country flag is displayed on our page. So here we call country dot name. Okay, so that's our content description. Then let's add some sizing to it. You see how this appears? We don't want it to be bogus or fill up the whole place, so we'll add some sizing here. So we're going to do that with modifier. So call our modifier dot size. So what size? Let's make this like 150 dp. Okay, I'm changing some of the sizes that I use in the original project, which we might notice the difference when we rerun this app. Okay, then let's clip it. So material theme dot shapes. I used medium before, let me use large. So that's done. Then the next thing we need to add on here is the content scale. We still want it to fit. Okay, so now let's add some spacer here. Here we have the modifier dot width, and we're going to pass 16 dp to that. Okay, so now right here we're going to call our card. We're going to use card again. So, and this our card has some card parameters. So we use our modifier that we've already defined. Dot, let's make it to fill the maximum width. So it can take up the width, the maximum width of the container, but it can just occupy the size of the element within it, so that it doesn't fill up the whole screen up to this point. So if we begin to add more, or some countries that have more languages, you see it just extends naturally instead of just filling up the whole space. We will not have much element to occupy those space. So, and also in case we have too many data inside, we want to enable vertical scrolling as well. So dot vertical scroll, remember scroll state. Okay, so then let's add some padding, general padding here, and we just add 10 dp. So after that, let's add our elevation again, even though it's elevated by default. We'll call card default dot elevated card elevation. So now after that, we're going to use another column to lay out all these elements within the card. But it seems the card has a column scope. So card, let's check. So yeah, card contains column, is a column scope. So we might not necessarily need a column to lay out this element, but I think I've not really paid attention to this before. But let's skip that column part and just layer out this text the way they are and see how they will come to appear at the end of the day. If it doesn't appear as we want or as we wish, then we can just come back and redo that. But let's check it out. So here we're going to call the details row, which is each of these rows. So we're going to create that. It's a composable. So we'll call it detail row, and it's going to have parameters like label, and the first one should be country name. I know there are better ways of doing this, but for demonstration purposes, this still works, and you can just modify it in your own way and make it look more interesting. Okay, so now this is going to have country name, then the value here is equal to, the value is going to be country.name. So before we proceed further, let's create that composable function down here. So let's create it so that we can now just use it to layer out our details row. So I'll put this in a new line. So I'll put this in a new line, yes. Then let's add our modifier again. I'll assign that to modifier. Okay, so now here we're going to use a row because we want the label to appear here while the value appear here. Okay, so we're going to use a row, and that row will have some parameters, which is going to be just to fill the modifier to fill the maximum width as well of the parent element. Then we want to set the horizontal arrangement, and it's going to be arrangement space between. We want the space to be evenly distributed according to the content or the text. So if you look at other countries that have longer details like Switzerland, yeah, you see it has more languages, so it just moves accordingly instead of running out of bounds. Okay, so that's done. Then the next thing is for us to add the text that we're going to be using for this display our. So the text, this is going to be label, and the style for the first one, which the style, okay, I want this label to be bold, so material theme dot typography dot body medium. Okay, so that's it. Then the font weight should be bold because it's highlighting the element, telling you what to see on the right. Okay, so after that we need another text, which is going to be our value. So this is going to be value, but the same body medium. So the font weight, let's make this medium as well. Okay, then we add text align. We want the text to align to the end. Okay, so that is why this text is aligned to the end instead of running from here. If you do it to align from start, that means now that we have just one text here, it comes here. So that's so that everything will look clean and uniform. Okay, so after that, we want the maximum line to be 2 because there are countries with longer name languages, so that it doesn't spill everywhere. So modifier dot weight, so you want it to be 1F, then the field is false. Okay, so that is our text. Okay, so with that created, now we can now populate our details as they should be. So now I've created for the name, we've created for the country name. So we're going to add a horizontal divider, which is this tiny line that you see here to demarcate it, because since it's all text and it's on a plain background, so that it doesn't like mix up like there are single text, for it to be easier for the eye to read. Okay, so here we're going to import horizontal divider. Yes, this one. Then we're going to pass the thickness, and that should be 2.dp, modifier dot padding, and the top padding is going to be 3.dp. Then the bottom padding, let's add 3.dp as well, so that we'll have a uniform gap up and down. Okay, I'll see you. All right, so everything is fine now, I assume. So now we're going to keep copying this and editing it. So as you know, I will copy this to, if you don't want to watch me do this, you can fast forward and skip this, because this is okay. So I think we've done that enough. So the first is country name, then the second is official name. So country dot official name. Okay, then the next one after the official name is the capital. So after that we have the sub-region. Okay, so the next one after that is the continent, and that after that is the area. Okay, so the area, we have to format that area so that it will appear nicely, because this is going to be a double, which is not going to appear nicely here. So first of all, we put everything in a string, then we'll call decimal format, which is this one, and we'll pass. Okay, so we call the hash, and so we format it like this, and we call dot format, and we'll pass our country dot area, and we'll pass the unit, so which is km square. All right, so I think we need one more down here. Is it one more or two more? We need two more. We need for the languages, and we need for the, we've done area, right? So we need languages and population. So let's do one more. Okay, so now this is going to be languages, and this is going to be dot languages. Okay, then we also, for languages, we need to join to string, because that's a list. Join to string, and we need to add the separator, and that's a comma. Okay, so just like here, you can see French, comma, Swiss, German, Italian, and Romance. Okay, so that's for our languages. Then the last one is our population, and this is dot population. All right, so population, we need to, because this is a long, we need to pass it to string as well. All right, so now we have our flag, then we have our country name. So the next thing I forgot is this search bar here, which we have not added the widget yet. So let's add that under the card, because it's part of the same, it's used on the same place. So let's add composable. Let's call this country search bar. Oh, form, it's gonna be form country search bar. Okay, so it's going to have its own parameters, which firstly is going to be query, and that query is going to be string, and we'll have on query change. So we want it to initiate once there is a change, it should search for that change, and this is going to be empty but returning type of string unit. So the next one is placeholder, which is this test here. This is this search country here, test, and it's going to be a string. So the next one is on keyboard type. So our keyboard type should be a test. So we call the keyboard type and we'll assign that to keyboard type dot test. Why did you come with this guy? Okay, just leave them. So now we're going to have an IME action dot next. So if we click next, it should move to another page. This is not actually necessary for this implementation, but let's leave it anyways. So after that, on action, we want, once you enter that keyboard action, the next action, it should be able to take you to perform the search query. So on keyboard actions equal to keyboard actions dot default. So whatever the default keyboard action is, we're happy with that. So down here, we're going to call our line test field. So our line test field, our value is going to be our query. Then on value change is also on query change. Then we need to add a label, and the label is going to be our placeholder. Okay, so then our leading icon, which is this search icon here, our leading icon is going to be to tell the user you're just searching something. So it's going to be icon, image icon, image vector. So this icon is going to be icons.default dot search, this one. Okay, so then just test to see that this is a search icon. Okay, so that's the leading icon. Then our trailing icon, which is, as you can see, if we type here, this cancel comes on, and once you cancel it, it goes back. So we need to add that. Our trailing icon, so our trailing icon here is going to be a lambda. So we say if query dot is not empty. So if query dot is not empty, that means the user have entered a query. So icon button, then on click, we should pass the on query change and assign an empty string. So on query change, and we'll assign empty string here. So but if there is something, like as you can see now, there's nothing here, there's the close icon is off, but once there is something, we need the icon to come on. So we pass icon, which is still image vector, and here we're going to call icons.default here dot close. Okay, so this close, so that's just to say clear search, to the user clears the search. Okay, so now we have finished with that. This keyboard actions and all that is not really necessary, so let's not waste time on that. I will cut all that out. After our trailing icon, we want the maximum line for this to be 1. Yeah, so the maximum line to be 1. Then again, I want everything to be a single line, so that when the user clicks enter, it doesn't go on the next line, because we want the user to enter just one thing at a time, not a whole bunch of text. So after that, let's add a shape. We want to make this rounded corner, and so the shape, we're going to use rounded corner shape, and we'll pass the size, which is 15 dp. Looks nice on that. So after that, we want to add this green color you're seeing here when it's highlighted. Like If it's not highlighted now, you see it's gray, but once it's highlighted it turns green. So let's just add that effect. So colors, we use colors and we'll call outline text field colors, outline text field defaults dot colors. So we don't need this value. So what we'll need here is focused border color. So let's say color dot green. Okay, so on cursor, the cursor is black. Okay, so let's add some padding. Let's make the cursor black once it's highlighted there, then add some padding as well. So cursor color is color, let's make it color green as well, so that once you go there everything turns green. That makes sense. So, and after that, let's just add modifier, the modifier dot fill max width. We want it to fill the maximum width there, right there. So let's add some padding. So the start, we want to add the start padding, and we want to make it 10.dp, and also end, we want to make it 10.dp as well. So that's our this thing completed, our search bar completed. This text is still highlighting. What is it saying? Annotated string. This is the error here, max line, not max line. Okay, that's done. Everything is settled now. All right, so this is our reusable widgets done. Everything we need that is reusable. So let's quickly create our screens. So first of all, we start with creating our list screen, and this is going to be a Kotlin file. We'll call it our country list screen. We're going to create a composable function, and in this composable function it's going to be fun. So, and it's going to, now here we're going to call our list view model like this, and we'll assign that to Hilt view model. We initialize that to Hilt view model. Then on country click, that's when you click the card, it's going to pass a unit, which is going to return the type string. All right, so now in the body we're going to collect our state. So we'll create a variable. So let's create a variable called state by list view model dot state dot collect our state. Okay, let's set the get value for this, and also let's use a column to layer out our widgets here. And in our column scope, we're going to have modifier dot fill max size, because we want it to fill the entire screen. Then here, first of all, we're going to call our outline text field, which we named country search bar. Is that what it's called? Yeah, this one. So here we're going to pass our parameters here. So firstly, our query is going to be state.search query, which we created initially in our ViewModel. Then on query change is going to be list ViewModel on search query changed. Okay, then the placeholder will now put whatever text we want, which is search country. So in case you want to use it somewhere else, you see, you can easily customize that without any restrictions. This is why we created it like that. All right, so now after that, we're going to check if state dot is loading, then now let us show a circular progress indicator to tell the user that something is happening in the background. We're trying to fetch this data from the database or from the API. Okay, align. So we want to align its center. So I want it to be in the center of this page. All right, so once that is loaded, then it tells the user. So if then now we'll set a condition here of how this list is going to be displayed. As you can see here, once we start searching for something, let's say, is there any country that starts with S? You see, the list is responding automatically. You see, so let's set that condition here that makes it behave like that. So now we say if state dot filtered states countries is empty dot is empty, and state dot search query is not empty. So we want it to show the user a message that no country was found. So what this means is that if, like here, the filter countries, like you can see here, SE, Gunsei have SE, Senegal, Montserrat, Sweden. But if we add comma here, that means there is something in the search query, but it's not correct. And it used to show us this message, right? So this is what we're trying to achieve here. So test is equal to no countries found, can even in the list, just to be more dramatic. So, and after that, let's style the text a little bit. Modifier dot a few marks width dot, let's add some padding and make it 16.dp. So, and also port dp, and also let's align it to the center as well. So test align. Okay, so that is so, but else if state dot filtered countries is not empty, is not empty, that means we want it to return a lazy column of items. So let's return a lazy column of items. So then the item is going to be state dot filtered countries, just like we have here. So now this is empty, is not empty and is correct. It should return the list of the filtered countries. Yeah. So and then we call our country. So we call our card, our country card, which is part of our reusable widgets. Is that not the name? Let's go back to our reusable widgets. Oh, I called it just country card. My bad. So here, let's pass the parameters, which is country, and we'll pass the country here. And the last is on click. We'll pass on country click, and we'll pass our country.code. That's the country code, which is our primary key, and is the unique identifier of the country we are searching for. So that is it. So now, or else, if not, then return our original list, which is also a lazy column. Okay, but this is going to be state.countries. Okay, not filtered countries anymore. So this is our list. Our list is done. So why this error? Where is it from? Have I done? Okay. All right. So moment of truth. Let's quickly give our app a run and see if everything works fine. Whoa. Starting in Kotlin 2.0, the Compose compiler Gradle is required when Compose is enabled. See the link for more information. So first of all, we have issues here. I think I should close down all this tab and close this guy up. So that means we have issue with our Compose compiler Gradle. So, and we'll start from here. We have Compose compiler here. Yeah. Let's check this libs file here. Compose compiler Gradle. Okay, this is quite ambiguous and looks okay. I think we're lacking one plugin here, which is Compose. So let's try that. Let's try this Kotlin Compose, and let's go back to this place and add it up as well. Alias. Okay, so we need the dependency for this Compose compiler that we just added. Let me make sure I have it here. Okay, let's go to this. I think we need to add that Compose here as well. How could I have missed this out? Okay, we need to add it here as well. So this is Kotlin. Okay, let's sync now and see if that error will go away. Okay, our sync was successful. So let's run that again and see. Ooh. We've got more red lines here. Okay, let's see. What is this one all about? I'll have to troubleshoot this. Say Kotlin. Step this down. Sometimes these compatibility issues becomes annoying. Okay, let's sync again and run it one more time, because I think I upgraded that to 2.1.20. And let's clean our build, our project, and rerun that and see if we're going to be successful this time, because it's been very annoying sometimes, you know. But let's keep. Okay, we have a successful build. I say it's the Kotlin version that is too high for the KSP. It always happens like that. I trust the app. Continue. Thank you for asking me. You see our tiny little logo here? It shows. Oh, my bad. We don't have a navigation yet, so we can't find our screen. Let's do it again, brothers and sisters. All right. Okay, at least there is no error. It means everything is working. So let's quickly create our navigation component and set it up. Okay, so here I'm going to create a package which you are going to call the navigation. Right, so here in our navigation component, we're going to have a composable navigation because we're using Hilt here. So this is going to be a file, and this is going to be called country navigation. Right, so now in our country navigation at composable, right, so it's going to be form country navigation, and which is going to be empty, no parameters. Then inside here we're going to create a val that we're going to call our nav controller, and that nav controller will assign it to remember nav controller like this. So after that we'll create our nav host. So our nav host is going to have a nav controller. We'll pass our nav controller, the one we just created here, and our start destination here is going to be countries, which is our route. Okay, so here now we have to create a composable and pass our route, which is countries, right? So countries, then in the nav back stack entry, we're going to call our country screen, which you have created, country list screen, which is this one. So inside it we're going to pass our code, then inside it we're going to call nav controller.navigate, then here we're going to pass our route, which is country / code. Okay, So with this now, we're going to go to our main activity, and inside our main activity, let's optimize this. Inside our main activity, just right here, we'll call our country navigation. So now that we've done that, let's give it another run and see what happens. If we're gonna see anything. Okay. Did it crash or did I close it? Let's check log cards. Oh, it crashed. Why? It looks like you've changed schema but forgot to update the version number. You can simply fix this by increasing your version number. Expected, blah blah blah. So because of this change we've made, that means initially on our first launch, our database was created, which we can actually see from here. You see, our database was created. Okay, so let me find out what happened actually. It seems it's seeing the old app. Let's close that down completely. So I think the problem is that on the other app, I use like almost the same name to create the new one. So let's try and disconnect, uninstall the app and reinstall it and see if that error is going to go away, so that you can recreate our database fresh. Okay, so you see it doesn't crash anymore. So it was conflicting with the other one because they had exactly the same name. So here, if we search for, say, no country found on the list, search for Chile, it doesn't have the list yet. So let's inspect our database. Okay, do we have the data, the cache data? Yeah, so let's see. Oh, our table is empty. The data has not been fetched from the API. Why? What happened? Where did we get it wrong? Let's make sure. Oh, we're connected to the internet. So why is it not there yet? Okay, so let's check our list screen and make sure that everything is where they should be. Okay, this is not supposed to be here anyway, so let me get this out. All right. So our state here is having some trouble loading our data. So let's inspect that again. So the table is empty. So let's rerun our app once more and see if we're going to get any data from the API. Our table is still empty. All right, so what is the problem? I think I've spotted the error here in our API endpoint link. This is, if we go back to this, if we go back to the API endpoint link, you discover that this is 3.1, not 3. So because of that, I'm assuming that is the reason why we're not getting any data from the API. So let's rerun this and see if we'll get something on our database. Okay, so moment of truth. No countries found. Really, this is serious. Let's check our database and see. Oh, pushed it down too much. Wow, it's still empty, not returning anything yet. Okay, this is serious. What about retrofit client? Did I mess that up as well? Okay, this looks good to me. And what about dependency injection? This is unbelievable. Okay, I'll have to take time to troubleshoot this and find out where the bug is, please. So welcome back, guys. I think this one took quite some time to figure out what the problem was, and I've made some changes to our app. So let me show you what I've done here quickly. Let's uninstall our app once again, because yesterday because I was thinking initially maybe we'll have timed out the API call will have exceeded the limit, but that was not actually it, because I have to leave this overnight to check the next morning to find out what the problem actually was. But I found out we made some mistakes, and that mistake is that in our DTO, data transfer object, our API call for this official name, in our initial code it was official name, but in the API endpoint it was recorded as official. So but we made that typo and the naming was not correct, so that's why it can't read the data. Because if you check our database, we'll have this official name here, but in the API endpoint it is official, just official. So once the data is coming from the API and it sees this column with official name, while the data from the our DTO has official name instead of official, so it doesn't know how to match that together, which is the initial reason why we have this DTO and also the mapper. So even in the mapper I made the same mistake. So if you are following along, you discover that in your code right now and correct it. So here we had official name name.official name, which was wrong, and as well we had the same thing here as well. So that is why the data was not filling up on our room database. Okay, so if you make that change in your own code, you're going to see your data will be loaded on the database when you inspect your database. So that is one thing. Then the second thing is that when you go to this country, this subregion is nullable in our entity, and in our country it wasn't nullable in the country repository. Yeah, so I made that nullable here, which affected our widgets, the way we called it up here in our widget. So I also using Elvis operator to add this, because if you check our table, you discover that some are null. You understand? So for null safety, we have to make it nullable for the countries that it's not filled up for. I don't know if that makes sense, but you just need to add this bit of code here and also go to your country entity and make this nullable, so that it can it can read correctly on our UI. So that is the second thing I changed. So now if we run our code is showing, but no list of data is showing here, which brings me to the third point. When we go to our list screen, this way we're using if else statement, which is kind of it does the job, but it doesn't do it very well, because our list is supposed to be loaded as soon as we launch the app. But because of the way we structured this code here in our UI, it doesn't, because the lazy column is called last, so we have to read through all these before it gets to this. So that's why until we search for something, if we search for something, you see the list has come up. So that is not a very good implementation, but now it's crashing because we have not implemented our details page. So, but if we do that again, we'll say India. If we cancel that out, then our list shows, because now the code have gotten to this point, so it can now show our list, which is not a very good user experience. So because of that, I have to refactor this code using when statement, which is what I've done here. So what we'll do now is, let me comment this out to show you quickly what I'm talking about. So if we comment this out and we want to comment this line of code, which I'm going to explain to you in a moment, then if we uninstall our app, our app is gone now. So now that we've using the new implementation, if we run the app, you will see that, let's see. So you see the difference now. So once we launch our app, our list is displayed immediately. Then if we search for something, it still filters our list as it should, right? So this is the difference from this old code and the new one. So what I did here was nothing else than I use when statement to load the progress indicator first for that first time that we're waiting for our data to be loaded. Then here, if there is any error, it should show us what the error is, which is a very good way of catching errors in our code, so that in case there is any network issue or whatever, we'll be able to find out what the error is, which is why this is. Then we'll now call our state query to check if the search query is not empty. Then if the filtered country is empty, that means there is something in the search query, but it doesn't match with what we have in our list. So it tells us that no country is found because there's no country with that code or that title, the name that has been entered. So then after that, then else, if we now created this variable here, which is val countries to show. So we have if statement, if state.query search, a search query is not empty, then what should we do? We should provide our filtered countries, which is exactly what's happening here. So once we enter something, we should provide the filtered country that has those characters, right? So, but else, if it's not, that means we should provide our countries, which is our original list, right? So then if country to show is not empty, that means we have something tangible here. Like if we search for India, you see it's a valid entry. So because of that, we should show the list of countries with those characters in them, which is why INDI is showing us India and British Indian Ocean Territory. So this is our most recent implementation. So because of that reason, I'm going to cut this entirely out, because we don't have any need for that old code anymore, because it doesn't give us the result that we desire. So now this is our implementation, and I'm going to also put this in the GitHub repository as well, so in case you want that. So what we're going to do next now is to create our detail screen, so which we should create, because we'll set up everything that we need for the detail screen. Our navigation is already set up. Let me close out this tab and close this guy down. So now let's close some of these things down. It looks a bit messy. All right, so here we're going to create, let's quickly create our detail screen file. So we'll call that country detail screen. Oh, call that a class. All right, that's no problem. So this is going to be fun, and we're gonna have some parameters. Okay, so let's add our composable annotation here. Yeah, so we're all set up for that. Then we're going to have some parameters. As you know, we need our code, which is a country code, and it's going to be a string. Then we also need our detail view model. Yeah, no country list view model, country detail view model. Okay, so that's the one, and we're going to initialize this with the Hilt view model as such. So now let us use a launched effect to load our state, and we'll set our key to the code that we're going to identify the country with. Then down here we need to create a function, and that is detail view model dot load country, and we'll pass our code here. Okay, so this will load our state once the application, and persist our state in case of any configuration changes. So here we'll create a variable state by detail view model dot state dot collect our states, which is going to collect our states. Let's get the values. So after that, we're going to use a box to lay out our widgets. So here we're going to use box, and let's make it fill the max width. Modifier dot, because this box is going to layer and fill up the whole page. So in that box we're going to have our async image that is going to load our flag file. Okay, using we don't need this guy again. Okay, so now our model is going to be image request from coil dot builder, and we pass our localized our local context dot current. So to get the context, which is the current country code that we've selected, its map. So here we're going to create because of these features, like we want to, once we load the details page, I can't load the old app again because of the controversy we had before, so I've deleted it. So now I want, once it's clicked, you see that blurry background. The background has the map of the country in the background and it's blurry, so we're going to do that here. So in order to achieve that effect, we'll come down here and we'll say dot data, because we're loading this data from the selected country, dot country, which is nullable, dot flag URL. So that is how we're going to select the particular flag of that country that have been selected. Then again, we'll have to pass a crossfade and set that to true. We have to enable crossfade here. So, and also let's now call build here. So after that, we'll set this contents description to null, because we are loading the flag in real time. So we can still set the name of the flag in case, but let's continue and leave that behind. So now we want it to fit the content scale so that it doesn't fill up too much. So then let's add some modifier to set up our blur. So I want it to fill the maximum size of the page. Then let's add the blur effect, and let's set this to 16.dp. Right, we need to import dp. Okay, so now our image background is all set. So let us now layer up the flag, the one that is on display on top of that card that shows the list of items. So we'll use column to do that. And now in the column, we have some column parameters. We'll set our modifier, and we want it to fill the maximum size, and also let's add some padding here, and we want a general padding of 16.dp as well. So after that, let's set it, because we don't want it in the center of the page, we want it to start from the top. So let's set some vertical arrangement, and arrangement the top, and some horizontal alignment, and let's set our alignment to center horizontally because we want it in the center of the whole page. Then after that, let's set some conditions here. So we'll say if state dot loading, then if the state is still loading, if it's taking time to pull up our country, let's set some circular progress indicator to tell the user something is coming up in a short time. Okay, file dot align, wants it to be in the center. So with that done, okay, there's no, it's horizontally here. All right, so now if not, let's show them that there is an error in case nothing was returned, and tell them what that error is. Okay, so we use test to tell them what the error they encountered was. What was the error? Maybe network error or whatever has happened, just to make sure they understand what's going on. Okay, so then if the data was successfully loaded, that is state.country, which could be nullable.let, just as we did above. So we should load the country content details that we set up initially. Country detail content, this one. Okay, and we can pass our country here. All right, so what we have just done is setting this condition. So if it's loading, show a progress indicator. If not, show them the error. Then if not, if we have successfully loaded our data, then show the data, the content that has been loaded. So now I think we've got that, but we need to, let's optimize this before we move on. We need to set up our navigation for the detail screen. Where are you? Okay, so in our navigation, we need to set up our navigation route so that we can, our implementation can find that. So just like we did above here, composable. So what's going to be our route? Our route here is going to be country slash then code, because we're locating this with the code, which is going to lead us to the next screen. So let's set backstack entry here. And we're going to set a variable here, variable code equal to backstack entry dot. Let's set our argument, and it could be nullable, then get string, because our code is of the string type. Okay, then we pass the key, which is the code. Okay, then using Elvis operator, let's return at composable. So with that said, then we'll call our screen, which is our detail screen here, then pass our code accordingly. So that's all done now. So with this, we can easily find our detail screen when we click on any of these cards. So let's rerun and see if that works. So we have, let's click, it crashed. What happened this time again? So it says illegal argument exception, malform pattern for ICU decimal format, trailing group separator is invalid at position 2. So where did we use this? Let's find out. Yeah, country widget here. So it's complaining that we did not format this correctly. So let's find out why that is. I guess it's because of this space here. Well, let's try again. Yeah, so it's because of that space here in our pattern. So we're not supposed to allow that space here. That's why we had that error. So now you can see our app is showing properly. So but this is kind of a little bit squashed. We need to make this look nice and clean, and the gap here is not that fantastic. So let's touch that a little bit, and let's check another country. Yeah, so that's a simple thing to do. So right here we have in our detail screen. So I think where that issue is here in our widgets. You remember when we were talking about adding that that column to add some padding here, and I said it might not matter. So this is now why. So but let's see if we increase the padding here. Let's make it like 25 and see if that's going to make any reasonable change and give our content some breathing space. If not, then we'll introduce that column. Yeah, it doesn't do that much. So because of that, I will add that column, and with that column, I guess we'll get the look and feel we're seeking. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut all this out. It's a lot. Okay, I'll cut all this, and let's add our column. So, and paste them here in our column. So in our column, let's add some column parameter. Let's add a modifier there to give that space that we were seeking. So, and we're going to use the modifier to add our padding. All we need is just general padding, and let's make it 16.dp and see how that changes out the look and of our details card. All right, you see that looks much better. Can you see? It looks much better than it was before. Then let's make this like 15 to add some breathing space above here as well. Oh, so you couldn't load data. I think we've hit our too much. Okay, that's network server downtime. It was very brief. Okay, you see, so this looks much better. I don't know why I like Switzerland. Oh, it looks better. Maybe that's my new destination. All right, so with that, we can comfortably say that we have achieved the results that we were seeking initially, and this beautiful app is done now. And I encourage you, we know we'll encounter some errors, which is part of coding. Some things might not work, typo errors from time to time. So but if you look past that, don't let it stop you, don't let it keep you from learning and practicing what you've learned, because that's the best way to learn programming and coding in general, or anything in life. You can do more by practicing than by reading books or sitting down to watch tutorials over and over again. So I encourage you to keep learning and practicing, and I'll see you soon. And also, if you've not subscribed, I notice a lot of you who are watching these videos or following these tutorials have not subscribed. I'll urge you please to subscribe, because this is going to help us a lot. It's kind of a pat on the back, encouraging us to keep going, so to keep making these videos for you. All right, until I see you again, keep being amazing and wonderful. Cheers. Before we go, let's clean up our presentation layer and set them up in the right packages. So we have our widgets in our component, we have our navigation in our navigation package. Now let's set up a package for our screens. So in our screens, we're going to have our two screens, the detail screen and the list screen. Okay, so the next one is our ViewModel package. So in our ViewModel package, the states and the ViewModel, I'll put all of them in the same place in the ViewModel package, and And that's it. So this is our presentation layer. Everything is separated the way they should. They look nice and clean. So now we have all our packages in the right places, and that's our app.